We were just talking about leadership traits. Let's talk about leaders' behavior. So, some of the early studies in leadership focused on job centered versus employee centered. So, in a nutshell, job centered is, am I focused on getting the job done no matter what happens to my team, the people I'm leading? Versus employee centered, am I more worried about my team than achieving the goals? Right? So if I was a coach, if I was employee centered, I'd be worried about playing everybody in the game, making sure everybody on the bench plays, and my team had good morale and they felt good about themselves and all that. If I'm job centered, to heck with all that. I'm playing the best players. I'm screaming them at halftime if they need it, if we're behind, and so forth. Right? I'm all focused about getting the job. So if you're coaching little kids like I used to do, right, you'd be employee centered, right? If you're coaching in the pros where they're going to fire you if you don't have a good winning percentage, right, then you're all about being job centered because it's all about results. All right, so one of the early approaches was happened in Ohio State where they looked at things like leadership or leader consideration versus leader initiating structure. So it's somewhat related to the other one where the previous one at Michigan, where leader consideration shows concern for subordinates' feelings and respecting subordinates' ideas. So there you go. I'm going to listen. I'm going to feel for you. So that would be the connected leader. The leader initiating structure behavior shows clearly defining leader-subordinate roles. Right. So if we have that, do the subordinates know what is expected of them, what is they're supposed to do, and all that? So like students in a classroom, they really want to know what's going on in this class. What are the projects? Do I have to come to class all the time? What kind of notes are there available? Are we going to take tests? Are we going to write papers? Is there a lab? All those kind of things. And this is sort of a means of evaluating leaders, and it led to things like, here we go, concern for people, concern for production. And again, that's sort of the job-centered, right? The job-centered is here, concern for production. The employee-centered is concern for people. So you hear terms when we talk about in leadership things like for this leadership grid. So these other studies got rolled up into this leadership grid, where we talk about things like if a leader doesn't have concern for production or their people, so they're just absent, we call that impoverished leader. Right? If they're all about the output, then they're all about authority and compliance. If they're all about taking care of their people and not worrying about production, then that's a country club, right? And I've certainly hear that term in business where an office is really pleasant, really nice, but not a lot of work going on. That's referred to as a country club to work in. One of these boss shows on TV, on cable, they had something where a manager actually brought in, well, she was the owner, brought in a masseuse Friday afternoons in the office so people could get back rubs. I have to admit, I personally have never seen that. So anyway, it's a thought though, right? Anyway, team management. If you have both, right, you should, and generally this is what we're looking for, right? And these are all shades of gray. That's why they're numbered. It's not one or the other. It's a continuum here. Right? You should have concern for both. You should have concern on making your goals and then taking care of the people. And generally, I've worked with like a number of project managers that would say things like, if you take care of the team will take care of you. Right? So concern for people hopefully will lead to concern for production. Other people would say is, I'm going to meet our organizational goals no matter what, but along the way I'm going to be as nice as I can to my team. But the goals come first. So if we gotta do something like call people in from vacation or work overtime for free or whatever, we're going to do it because we gotta make our goals, or there'll be negative consequences for all of us. So different ways to look at that. So we had different situational leadership models come up, and basically this tells us that I'm not sitting here going to show you the one slide of the magic leadership model. Why is that? Because there isn't one. If there was, this would be a very short chapter. We wouldn't have 3 chapters on leadership. It would say, this is how you do it just like this. So for instance, if I could teach you how to shoot foul shots, I could teach you that in one lesson, right? This is how you do it. You have to practice it a lot, but there's one way, right? There's sort of one dominant way of shooting foul shots. They used to shoot them underhand, but now everybody shoots overhand like jump shots, right? Well, leadership isn't like that, because what's different? Right? We have different leaders in different situations, but the situation is different. So the same leader might lead differently in different situations. Or the followers are different. So the leader might be different, and it might be a similar situation, but different people being led. So for instance, I mentioned I'm a if I'm coaching soccer, right? If I'm coaching the little kids, I coach in one style, and if I coach the big kids, suppose they're teenagers, right? I'm going to coach them differently. I'm going to expect them to know more, right? It's just going to be a totally different conversation with them. Right, so there's this leadership continuum where we talk about, again, is it boss-centered or is it subordinate-centered? Am I worried about the goals? Am I worried about the people on the team, or some mix thereof? So there's lots of different people have proposed models for different models, but this trait keeps coming up. Do I trade off the results versus how hard I drive my team? Right. And the LPC theory of leadership was by Fiedler, where he talked about least preferred coworker. So basically, he had the people who preferred you least to analyze you. And a couple takeaways from here. I don't particularly care for this model personally, from the standpoint of you have to take this survey and then it tells you how to behave in certain situations. So it's very, very prescriptive, as we call it. But it did a couple things. One, Fiedler showed us that leadership is situational. You must assess the situation and you must assess who you're leading, right? So those things are vital, right? Less included in his theory is different leaders lead different styles. So Mother Teresa and Gandhi had different leadership styles, not just because of the situation they were in, but because of themselves, right? One felt more comfortable with one style than the other. Okay, so by the way, so Mother Teresa wasn't afraid to tell other people what to do. Gandhi said, I'm going to show you how to do it, and I invite you to join me. Right? Mother Teresa, by the way, I sometimes in leadership class I show this video of her. I've heard people at work say, well, I'm no Mother Teresa, because they're going to crack the whip on somebody, right? They're going to make them do something, right? Well, it turns out Mother Teresa was a whip cracker, right? She's hardcore. She was a my way or the highway type of leader. So she was at least as task-oriented as personnel-oriented, probably more so. So she drove her religious order with a lot of discipline. When she rang the bell, you came. When it was time for something, you did it. When you were late, you heard about it, right? So I always thought that was funny, because I've heard when I was in the workforce for 20 years, I would hear people say, well, I'm no Mother Teresa, right? Turns out, yeah, you're not. She was much tougher than you. I always thought that was interesting. Anyway, back to the Fiedler theory of leadership here. Situational favorableness factors determine proper leadership focus. So what makes leaders stronger, right? So these three things: leader-member relation, task structure, and leader positional power. So what are those? Right, so let me find the right slide here. Well, let me just talk about it from this standpoint. So he posits that leader-member relationship are important. So what's the relationship between the leader and the follower? And we'll have a whole theory that talks about that in a little bit, the LMX theory. But basically, the stronger the relationship, the more power the leader has in exerting influence. Task structure: the more well-defined the task is, the more we know what we're getting into, the more people will let the leader influence them. And then leader positional power: the more, if there's a hierarchy, if there's an organization, if there's a title for the leader, so the more positional power the leader has, the better. So for instance, here at the college, if I'm on a committee and we have a chair on the committee, but it's a bunch of faculty together, yeah, we have a leader and we voted the chairman, but quite frankly, they don't have a lot of power. So for instance, if I vehemently disagreed, there's really no negative consequences for me. I mean, I can be outvoted and the committee decides to do one thing and I decide to do another, but I can pretty much say what I want and do what I want, and there's no negative consequences, right? If I'm in the United States Army, not so much, right? So if I disagree with my general and I tell him, look, general, you are wrong, and I'm a major quite a bit, further down the food chain from the general, right? Trust me, there will be negative consequences, right? They can even do things like throw you in jail for insubordination. They can certainly make sure you never get promoted again. Right? They might just bust you right out of the Army and ruin your whole career that you spent 15, 20 years building. So to be sure, there are negative consequences. So the more positional power a leader has, the more they're liable to exert influence in getting things done. All right, and this is what they're telling us. If there's a more structured environment, right, it's better. If the leader-member relationships are good and the task structure is unstructured, all right, then I might want to be more person behavior. If the leader-member relation is poor, you don't like your leader, you don't trust him or whatever, right, then I'm going to go towards more the task or oriented behavior, right? I'm gonna be more of a whip cracker and insist they do things a certain way.